Good evening and welcome to UK Crime Book Club. I'm delighted to be joined by Ragnar this evening, and we're going to be talking about his love of whodunit, his writing, probably lots of things. And if you want to ask some questions, please send them through, and I'll try and keep up with them. But I imagine we'll probably have quite a few, so we'll see how many we get through. Hi, Ragnar. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here.
We're going to talk about your writing and your latest book, Death at the Sanitorium, which I've just finished, literally, before it came online. I like to leave it until the last minute because I was talking about witches this afternoon. So I have to get from witches to creepy murders. And this one is a real creepy murder, isn't it?
Yeah, it sort of is. Usually a little bit different from what I usually do, but we had one death that was unusually creepy.
Yeah, and gruesome. I quite like the gruesomeness of it. Yeah, because I think I missed. So if I'm right, this sort of is a spin-off of one of your other series. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, so this is a spin-off of the Hulda series, which started with The Darkness. And so we did 3 books with Hulda, and when that was finished, so basically in the first book about Hulda, she is 64 years old, and she's leaving her job as a police officer.
Yeah,
and then we go back in time and see her basically grow younger, and when I'd finished all these 3 books, I was thinking about the person who would take over, her job, her chair, basically her office in The Darkness, because that's an unnamed character. That's just a up and coming young policeman. And so I started thinking about what he would be like, what would be his interests, and that turned into like a different series. And as it was a spin-off, Hulda makes a little bit of a reappearance.
Yeah, and it was she does appear in this one, and I've read the other series as well. So if people who haven't read it, she does make, because this book is set in 2012 and 1983. So it was quite nice to go back to the 80s. I'm an 80s. I was brought up in the 80s, so it was quite nice to go back to the 80s, and the 80s references were quite fun. I was sort of really interested in it is how you managed to sort of keep when you're having, so you've obviously written that series, and that's quite a while ago, wasn't it? So that's sort of gone, and now you're sort of revisiting it, but not exactly.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Hulda is a character that sort of stayed with me for ever since I stopped writing, and actually what I've done this year in Iceland is I've done the 4th book about Hulda. It was never supposed to happen. So the trilogy has turned into 4 books, and so she is like it's hard to let go.
She's like the boomerang child, keeps coming back.
Yeah, and the books about Helgi are supposed to be like 3. I've done 2 already, and it's in Iceland, and it's supposed to be a trilogy as well. So she will make an appearance in all 3.
Yeah, so we'll come back to that later on. I wanted to talk about the next book, but we'll talk about this one first before we get before we go on to that one, because I'm really interested in the next one. So the inspiration? So obviously, Hulda was the inspiration behind the book, but what was the sort of inspiration behind the setting of the sanatorium? Because that's quite an interesting place in itself.
Yes, thank you. I mean, that's a real place in the north of Iceland, and I mean, that was just originally the inspiration was just to this hospital that it's been around for like I think 70 years, and I knew about it, and I was I think I was just listening to the radio, and there was it was the 70th anniversary of the hospital, and someone had written a book about it, and I thought this could be a nice setting for a story. And it is today. It's more like an elderly care home, but part of it has been turned into like a museum. And if you go into that museum, you basically see the hospital corridors like they used to be back in the 40s, 50s, and it's that is a creepy place to visit. It's a fantastic museum.
I guess that sort of sense of place and is very important in your novels, and obviously that being set in Iceland sort of gives it that sort of, I've never been to Iceland, so I can't say that it's creepy, but from all the books I've read, it seems quite creepy. But is that something to do with the darkness? Is it to do with the fact it's so isolated? Is it all of the above?
I think all of it. I mean, like Iceland is in the winter. It's a dark place, and so just that in itself, makes it easier to write books in the wintertime and also set them in the winter. And Iceland is also a big place, so it's easy to get lost. And if you go away from the main cities, it's just a lot of space, a lot of places that no one you won't find a single person. And also the weather, it's unpredictable, and so all of this is something that's easy to use in a book.
Because I know that you're a huge fan of Agatha Christie, as I am, so I'm quite interested to talk to you about that shortly. But that sort of, I guess that sort of setting of that sort of isolation and the darkness does lend itself to crime really well, because you can have that sort of locked room mystery sort of places that people wouldn't be able to get to, and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, Agatha is always a big inspiration for me, and the ways she used her settings, such a great, with such great results.
Yeah,
is something I've tried to do in my own way in Iceland. It's a very different sort of, different sort of area. I mean, none of her books were set in Iceland. I think she only mentioned Iceland once in her whole 70 books.
Really? Oh wow, that's really that's because
that's one. I mean, that's a good question for anyone who's watching. If anyone can guess which book.
That is a good question. Yeah.
Yes. I'll give you the answer later if you want.
Yeah, answer later. So if anybody's watching and they know what book, my husband's hopefully listening downstairs. He might be able to. He's quite good at. I've never even interesting, because she set her books in a lot of hot countries. So there's a lot of Middle East and where her husband was doing archaeological things. So that's really, really interesting. So so setting is obviously massively important for you, as are the characters in the book. So we were talking about sort of Helgi. I was quite interested in him, and he's quite a conflicted character, isn't he? He sort of loves his whodunits and loves his life, but he doesn't really want to be in Iceland. He doesn't really know whether he wants to be in Iceland. He likes the UK, but he's got this partner that wants to be in Iceland and wants him to be with her. And he's quite I do quite like a sort of a tortured soul as a detective.
Yes, as I mentioned, he was just sort of created from this phantom, this unnamed policeman who would take over from Hulda, and so when I was creating him, he needed some characteristics. One of them was, it would be a guy who loved books, and so for that, so he would be easy to love for the readers, and just like me, I'm in my library now, surrounded by a lot of crime fiction or a lot of Golden Age books, and so a little bit like him, he loves his Golden Age stories and these old Agatha Christie books and stuff like that. So for me, that was really easy to write and a lot of fun, and also just a nice way to tell the readers about titles that they might not know about.
Yeah, I was Googling a lot when I was reading it, because there was some that I knew, and I hadn't heard of Peter Dulleth, was it? I hadn't heard of those before, and I was just telling my husband earlier about the Dutch shoe mystery. So I've definitely, so Roger Ackroyd, obviously I knew, but I always really like to get new one. So there's like sort of doing these interviews in the past, John Dixon Carr I hadn't heard of before, and I mean I have now, but it's always good to get new ones. And Ellery Queen I'd heard of, but not. You give in the book quite an insight into the background of them, so that was interesting.
Yes, they're pretty much out of print, especially in the UK. But these are fantastic books, some of them. And the Dutch Shoe Mystery, I would recommend that for anyone. It's a really good Golden Age mystery set in a hospital as well. Yeah,
I saw it had the hospital. Was that sort of something? So when you sort of found the setting of the sanatorium, did it sort of come to you quite quickly? What was going to happen? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think most of my favorite authors have, from the Golden Age, have used hospitals. Most of the best books. I mean, Agatha Christie did not. Maybe there was not a lot of Agatha Christie, but Nio Mars had one in a hospital. We had Green for Danger by Christiana Brandt. It's set in a wartime hospital. The Dutch Shoe Mystery, and these are all very good books. Very sort of. Yeah. It's a great setting. P.D. James, even though she's not like a Golden Age author, she did a very good hospital or like a sanatorium setting.
I think there's something about hospital. I guess probably because the fear of hospitals, quite a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And especially an old, creepy hospital, because I think in the UK there's quite a lot of old sort of closed down asylums from from the years where they were, and they always sort of conjure up sort of impressions of quite a creepy, big old sort of building that's quite stark and empty. And
yes. Yeah, exactly. And it is like yeah, I mean, it's generally these narrow corridors, and you don't know what's behind the doors, and it's it's a lot of it's nice.
So the other characters in the book, so there's a sort of I think we can say that there's a murder that happens quite early in the book, and so there's different people working in there, and Tina finds the body. I think we'll say that. And then what happens after that is that they sort of do what people do, which is everybody points the finger. And I imagine in a small country, it's like a small town, a small village, people tend to sort of point the finger at the people who maybe seem, they're a bit different, they're a bit sort of off the wire, so the finger gets pointed at somebody quite early on.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's very much Agatha Christie because it's a small group of suspects, and I enjoyed working with that in a way. And when you have a small group, it's you have to use some tricks to move the suspicions around, and hopefully you can manage to like save a bit of a surprise for the ending. Yeah,
I think that's sort of surprising the readers is quite important, isn't it? For the you want to. So I think it's with Agatha Christie, you thought you knew where she was going with it, and you thought you knew who it was, but you were very often, well, I was very often wrong.
Yes, yeah, I mean that's a specialty, really.
Yeah. Did you sort of growing up, you sort of read Agatha Christie? How old were you when you sort of were sort of when you sort of started to read her?
I think about 12. And I think I was recommended one of them and started reading right away. I think it was Evil Under the Sun.
Mm-hmm.
And there was really no turning back after that. I just kept reading, buying books or going to the library, and just it took me maybe a couple of years to just finish every single Christie book I could get my hands on, and in the end I had to like spend weekends at the National Library reading out of print titles.
So you read them in English when you first started?
No, all in Icelandic.
Oh, you read them all in Icelandic, yeah.
So, but when I ran out of translations that were available to me, I started reading in English, and so that was the first book I read in English was a Christie book.
Right. So that's quite different, isn't it? It's quite, especially I imagine with the language, although it wouldn't have been, the language is quite different.
Yes, but I mean, Christie's English is not too complex.
No.
So that is, it's an, I think it's for a lot of foreigners, it's an easy, gateway into English reading.
Yeah. Did you when you sort of started to write this series, did you always know that it was going to be more than one book? Was it a standalone when you started, and then it sort of developed into a series?
So for the Sanatorium,
yeah,
you mean? I think that was always going to be a series. Yes, basically because it's a spin-off of the Hulda series, and that was a trilogy. So I think I always saw this as a trilogy.
Yeah.
And yes, and I think that will be that's how it's been presented, at least to some readers. And so I have to finish the third book now. Done the first two.
You've done the first two. And sort of the plotting and the weaving together of the story, how does that sort of work? Are you a plotter? Do you sort of sit down and do you know what your beginning, middle, and end is going to be when you start, or is that something that progresses as you write?
No, yeah, I know that very well, and I would never start the book unless I knew how it would end.
Yeah.
But of course, it takes twists and turns on the way there, and maybe new characters are created, or new plot lines are imagined as well. But it's but I think it's just for me, at least, as with my background in like these classic puzzles, I think the essence of the puzzle is so important that you want to know where you're going.
So we've got some questions coming in on the chat. So lots of questions actually. So if you could collaborate with an author past and present, who would you write with?
Oh, I think that would be past and present. That would definitely be Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think. Present time, I think. I am trying to collaborate with Anthony Horowitz on a play.
Oh, great!
We are meeting next month to continue that work, but it's a slow process. But he would always be near the top of my list of people to work with, because he's incredibly imaginative and clever. So maybe I could make that happen.
Yeah, I really love. Well, I love the Magpie Murders and the Moonflower Murders.
Yes.
I also really like his I can't remember the name of the detective series that he does, where he's the sort of where he plays the sidekick.
Yes,
Hawthorne. That's it. Yeah. No, he would be great.
Very,
yeah,
very, very, very good.
Yeah, because he's a really I like that sort of, he's a sort of a Columbo-esque type
yes
sort of character. Laura said, what was it like writing with the Prime Minister?
Oh, that was a nice experience, because it's pretty lonely to work on a book, and I've done that many times now. And so it's a similar process every time. So I thought it would be nice to try something different, and work with a friend, and it was just it was very pleasant. There was no arguments really, and it was a different type of process in a way, because even though I have my books planned out before I start, I wouldn't necessarily go and write chapter by chapter. Like a chapter by chapter overview. It's more like it's just in my mind, and I sort of know where I'm going. But when there's two of us, we had to pretty much do a synopsis of the whole story before we started writing, because we split the chapters between us. And
I was going to say, did you work? Yeah, you worked it so you did a chapter each, and did that?
Yeah.
So did it work? Was it difficult for you because you're used to writing alone to sort of give up that sort of?
I mean, in a way, but I mean, because it was my idea to begin with, I was quite ready to let go and listen to her ideas as well, and so it turned out really well, and we're still friends, and that's it was. No, so I mean, if she had a strong view on something, it was fine with me, because it was never supposed to be only my book. It was supposed to be different, and I think we managed to make it, a different tone from the rest.
That's good, because I've spoken to husband and wife sort of author teams, and they quite often have that that seems to work as well, but that you just have to have those sort of clear guidelines, I guess, or both know what you want out of it, I guess.
Yes. And for Catherine, it was just something different from the politics, because she's a big reader and a big fan of crime fiction. So she had an experience that was very different from what she's used to, and visiting book festivals abroad, she managed to do a bit of that, and just meet readers. It's I think we both enjoyed it.
Do you think you would do it again?
Yes, I think we would, and she's left as Prime Minister now, so she has a bit more free time. So we've started discussing if we should do one more.
Nice, that's good, great. So I've got some more questions. So how does it feel to be a writer of a TV series?
Yes, so I actually did not write the series, but it's based on the book, and that is a wonderful experience to see the story come to life. And I was I tried, as I say, I did not work on the script at all, but I was one of the executive producers, and I was able to be on set quite a lot and to watch this in real time happen. And I think we were very fortunate. There was a great cast, great crew, a very strong script. Just very lucky to have people like this working on this series, and it's been premiered in Iceland, and it's I was very, very happy with it. But it's just a strange feeling to see your name on the screen and to see the characters you made being portrayed and coming to life, and a lot of most of the main characters from the book found their way onto the screen, because there's a bit of extra characters that because it's a 6-part series. So it's a slightly longer story, but in essence, it's the same story as in the Darkness. So it was great fun. And to be on set, was quite an experience. I think I did not realize before how many people have to come together to make one scene happen. It's a lot of people for each from the director, the cinematographer, and the actors and everyone and the crew, like second cameraman, second director. There's a lot of titles and a lot of people, and everyone has a very clear role, and it's incredible to watch how they make it happen. It's such a complex process, and we did this in Iceland in January and February, and it's tough conditions as well, due to the weather and the cold, and so it was challenging as well. We did a few days in the mountains, which was really cold. It was minus 15.
Wow.
When you spend a whole day in those conditions, even though you have, you're well dressed, it's still very, very cold, and it sort of gets really under your skin. And I was incredible to see the crew working, because I was just there observing and getting in the way, but there was actually people working there, and they made it all happen.
you don't sort of think of it when you, I mean, I've watched sort of dramas set, you know, in Iceland, and you sort of, you know, they always have like the fantastic scenery and the snow, and but you actually don't, you forget about that actually there are people that, you know, how much that takes to get those pictures in the snow, and were you happy with the, were you sort of, did you sort of imagine, do you imagine your characters in your head? Do you know what they look like? Do you, or are you sort of, you don't physically,
I mean, sometimes it depends. But for Hulda, I mean, I don't think I had a really strong view of how she would look. It was more like what type of a woman she was.
Yeah.
But when we, you know, when I was introduced to Lena Olin, who's playing her, it was, you know, from the moment, you know, from the first moment, it was obvious that this was the right.
Yeah, she was the right one.
Yeah, I mean, she's fun, you know, just a fantastic actress and a great person as well to work with. And she really, you know, she really got the essence of the character, so she was able to transform into her. So I think we were very lucky to have Lena, and I mean, and Lasse Hallström, who is directing, as her husband, and they're both Academy Award nominated artists. So it's you know, so it's a very high level of talent that we got.
And that must be, to have someone who's obviously, you know, a character that you've had with you, and you've written another book, and you've written a book with her, you know, another series with her sort of in the background. A character like that must, who you've invested so much time, it must be a relief, I guess, to have someone who you think, yeah, that's okay. Yeah, she's good. I'm happy with that.
Yes. And even, I mean, I think, I mean, the new book, as I mentioned, I did this 4th book about Hulda. I mean, and that book is basically inspired by this process, inspired by Lena and Lasse. Just, you know, the idea came to me when we were starting filming, and I saw Lena doing the scenes, you know, the same scenes again and again, and how incredibly well she captured the character. I thought, you know, this character may deserve one more book.
Yeah, she deserves one more. So when we were talking about the Death at the Sanatorium, and then there was a 2nd book that's due out, and that's coming out in the next year.
Yes, next year, yeah.
And has that got a title, or?
Yes, it's called The Mysterious Case of the Missing Crime Writer.
Ah, interesting. And is that set in Iceland again? And
yeah, so same main character, same time. I mean, even the same year. It's set later in the same year. So
in 2012, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just a continuous story, and there is also, like, Hulda is also a secondary character in that one. So we see her again back in the late 70s, I think, early 80s, and so as the title suggests, this is it's a you know, a little bit playful story, because it deals with Iceland's most popular crime writer who goes missing.
Sounds familiar.
So it's a 70-year-old woman who is in the story like the, you know, the queen of Icelandic crime fiction for many years, and she just disappears, and she doesn't use a mobile phone. She doesn't even use a computer to write her books. So she's very much, you know, a golden age character in a way. She lives alone, and then one day, you know, no one can find her, and I was, you know, I had a lot of fun with that, and there's a lot of references there as well, and references to golden age crime novels that deal with disappearances, etc.
So you've really enjoyed that, sort of being able to sort of weave those titles into the book. So the character, like, so he's reading along, and you can sort of pick those in. So is that something that you've done because you want to sort of share your love of that golden age crime, and sort of get people to think, oh, I haven't heard of that one before, or I'll pick that one up and have a look?
Yeah, I mean, basically that is why. I mean, just it's a lot of fun for me, but I'm hoping it will also like bring new readers to these long lost titles, and you know, deserve new readership.
So going back to the Death at the Sanatorium, sort of that misdirection and sort of surprising the reader. Was there any challenges particularly with this book of, you know, making that sort of not be obvious who had done it, and you know, sort of leading the reader down that path of, oh, I think it's that person, but it's not.
I mean, it is always a bit tricky, but because you know from the start, you know, as the author, you know where the story is going and
Yeah,
what the surprise will be. I think it is a little bit easier. I mean, it's tricky, but you sort of try not to make mistakes on the way and early on, and try to keep the truth hidden a bit. But it's always, you know, it's always hard to know how it will turn out, and of course, you know, but you have this, you know, you have a feeling when you get to the end of the story, but then you have someone read it, and you know, I'm very happy always if someone tells me that this came as a surprise.
Yeah. Are you happy? Is your sort of first draft, is it sort of rough, or are you pretty happy with it at the end of the first draft, or does it have like are you a big editor, or are you a sort of, it's done and you edit as you go?
For me, it's pretty much done. Of course, we have to, you know, some work to be done always, but I don't like, you know, I not like to be asked to rewrite a whole book.
Yeah,
because I much more enjoy, you know, doing stuff from the start.
Mm.
But of course, you know, it has to be right, and so a lot of people who read this, and so it's always quite a process, nevertheless.
Yeah. So the Holder book is out. Is that out before the second one in this series?
No. For the UK, I mean, it's out in Iceland this month, but in the UK, it was, I think, probably try and finish this series.
Yeah.
I don't think I know actually.
No. Okay.
But the next one will at least be this about the missing crime writer.
Yeah. No, that sounds really fun. What was it? Yeah, so Sarah's asking, who is your favourite author? I know you've sort of touched on Agatha, but is there sort of any sort of contemporary authors that you like? Is there a sort of anybody that you have a go-to for?
I mean, yeah, I mean, I said Anthony Horowitz earlier. I mean, I would read pretty much anything he writes.
Yeah.
I do also, I mean, who else? There's a Swiss guy called Joel Dicker, who wrote about his most famous book is called the Harry Quebert Affair.
Oh yeah, I think I've heard.
So I mean, he's one of the authors that I just pick up pretty much automatically. There's a US author called Peter Swanson.
Yeah, I heard of him. Yeah.
There's a, you know, it's very clever. You know, a lot of authors, but also the Golden Age. I mean, you mentioned Ellery Queen.
Yeah.
There's an author called S.S. Van Dyne, who I think may be in this book or under the next one as a reference. I have a collection of his books here at my office as well, and so I love reading or rereading those books. And P.D. James. I mean, I pretty much loved every book she did. There's not a lot of titles from her, but they were all very, very good.
Because I guess the Golden Age crime, there's so many, and I think they're becoming even more sort of, so authors like yourself and other authors who are bringing them into the sort of the limelight, the books that are, like you said, have gone out of print or going out of print, they're becoming sort of reissued and then they are being rediscovered. So the British Library do their sort of crime classic series, which it sort of brings books that have gone out of print and back in again, and they're really popular.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think they've done a great job in bringing back lesser known titles.
Yeah, because it's important, isn't it, for those sort of, for like, I think it's really interesting how crime and technology and all that sort of thing has progressed so much in the last sort of 50-60 years, but actually that sort of really basic crime whodunit is still, it's still it's weathered the test of time, hasn't it? Before, people still want to write like Agatha Christie, 70 years ago after she's, passed away. They want to still be able to do what she did because she was so good at it. And it doesn't matter whether there's how many smartphones or whatever it is, people just want to find that sort of magic that she was able to put on the page.
Oh yeah. There's something about, there's really something about this format that is classic. I mean, there's a reason for this, these being classic books. I mean,
yeah,
it works, and people want to go back to this again and again. And of course, you try and find a new add to it or a new side to the formula, do something different. But in the essence of this game with the reader, this puzzle is, I think, something that it really endures.
It was because you said that said about the hospitals, but she works in a hospital, didn't she, in the Second World War? And
yes,
that's where a lot of her poison sort of, came from. And so even though she didn't do a hospital one, she definitely brought her experience of the hospital into her writing by, strychnine and all the other poisons that she used. And that's something that I think that's one of my favorite parts of her books is the sort of the poisoning factor, and how clever that is, because she always manages to get it in, and in the weed killer or the digitalis or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I mean, that's of course one of the things that she did best was the poisons, and so that's very true. That she brought the hospitals into the books in that way.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Is that like
books?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot, of course. One book that is slightly lesser known that I often say is The Murder on the Links, which is the early Poirot. I really love that book for many reasons. It's cleverly plotted. It has Poirot and Hastings working together, and so I love that one. I mean, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is a classic, obviously, and then there were none as well.
Yeah.
But it's most of the early ones.
Yeah.
Are really, really excellent, and some of the later ones. But from the early decades, the books that are classic mysteries in a way it's very hard to go wrong with any of them.
I like to find. I mean, I've read them all now, so it's but it's nice to go back to them, isn't it? And I guess if you've read them a lot of times, you still find things in them, don't you, that you didn't see the first time.
Yes, it's always nice to reread them for whatever reason, and also just to I mean, the rare instances that you pick up a Christie book and you forgot who done it. I mean, that's so nice as well.
Yeah.
But for the best ones, of course, it's very, very hard to forget.
I mean, I must admit, Poirot is my favorite. I have to say, I'm a big Poirot fan. And I think, although she, allegedly didn't like him so much towards the end, do you sort of think that, do you think Hulda is your Poirot, maybe?
Oh, I mean, that's a very good question. Maybe she is. She's the one that's hard to get rid of. But
yeah.
I still love her. I mean, I really enjoy.
You don't dislike her yet? Yeah.
No, I don't know. So not yet.
But not yet. Yeah, you maybe have to have a few more to go on, and then sort of. Yeah. Although she has, well, I guess she did have her she didn't have her ending, but she had her end of career, didn't she?
Yes.
So, but she hasn't had a ending like the curtain ending.
No.
So sort of that's sort of so what's next for you? Are you sort of is the TV show is done, and do you think there'll be another series, or do you think?
That's very hard to say. I mean, I don't know. Let's hope so. And but if not, we have a few other projects that's sort of either in the works or our ideas. We've sold one of the books called Outside to Ridley Scott's production company in the
Oh,
US.
great. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that might be the next one that we can work on. But I think I think that's a very exciting world to work in as well.
Yeah.
But yes, but I'm working on a few books as well. One ghost story and another Golden Age story that's not in this series, and then just something, short stories and whatever. I mean, it's all about doing something interesting at each point.
Do you write when it's in the winter? Do you write more in the winter than you do in the summer, or is it? Yeah.
Yes, usually I do. Yeah, because it's because the summertime is so short in Iceland, really, and it's so bright and really so lovely. It's difficult to be stuck inside if
So you want to get it all done now, this time between now and February, March time, and then
April even.
April, really? That
April is a winter month in Iceland as well.
Yeah, we complain here because it's our clocks go back tonight, so
yes, yeah.
So then we always complain because it's dark at and I saw there was a thing on the news today to say that somewhere in Norway now has 81 days of darkness. So, and I was just like, I don't think I could cope with that.
No, then you just have to sit inside and write or read.
Write or read, yeah. So are you still as a prolific reader as you've always been?
I mean, no, I wish I were, but I buy a lot of books and but there's just not enough hours in the day to read all of them. And, but I try, and I love reading, but it's just a lot of distractions.
Yeah, no, there is. I'm the same. I buy a lot of books and they are all behind me on the shelves. A lot of them I haven't read, some of them I have. So have you got any plans, because I know you come over to the UK, have you got any plans for events coming up, or is it sort of, I know there's Iceland Noir, isn't there, coming up soon?
Yes, so I think no events in the UK for the rest of the year, but we have Iceland Noir coming up November 20th.
Yeah.
And so that's the next big thing. I mean, I'm doing quite a few events there, of course, and just co-chairing this with my friend Irsa. And so if anyone has some free time in November to come over, I mean, I think it will be a lot of fun. We have Anthony Horowitz coming over, and we have David Williams coming, and we have Robert Zemeckis, Ann Cleves, and Brenda Blethyn, Harlan Coben from the US, and just and lots and lots more, plus a lot of Icelandic authors, and it's always a lot of fun. It's always super friendly, and it's a small festival in a way, because we sell tickets until the venue is full, and that's it. So it's usually a lot of opportunity to meet your favorite authors and just sit and chat with them.
Yeah, sort of a more cozy sort of festival feel, rather than the huge ones where you're on stage miles away from everybody.
Yeah, it's very friendly, and yeah, so we like it. So it's this year and again next year. So we're happy to have as many guests as we can fit in.
Fantastic, that's great. So yeah, just looking at this sort of time and sort of looking at what's ahead, sort of for you, and we've talked about the books, and what's it sort of longer term? Have you got any sort of plans of what you'd like to do? Is there sort of anything writing wise that you've got sort of itching to do?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. I mean, there's a few books that this series that I would love to finish and to see what happens after that. Plus, just to focus a little bit more on the TV side, if as long as there is interest in that, because that's a very exciting world, to just so different, and it reaches a lot of people as well, so you can tell your stories to a different audience. One more thing is just I love going to the theater. I love plays. And I've never really I've translated one play that's been put on here in Iceland last year, and so next step for me would be lovely to write a play. And as I said, one project there is this partnership with Anthony Horowitz that we have talked about a few times, but it still we haven't finished the play yet. So I'd love to do a play, and I'd love to see a few more series, see what happens. But it's all about creating and writing.
Well, it sounds like you've got the perfect place to do it at this time of the year anyway. So
yes.
And Anthony's always so busy, isn't he? He just writes prolifically. He's
very, very busy. I think that's one of the reasons, though, this hasn't happened yet. But as I say, we're meeting this next month, and hopefully we can settle on a plan.
Thank you. Well, I think it's been great to chat to you, and I'm really interested in sort of finding out. I really enjoyed Death at the Sanatorium, and I'm looking forward to reading to find out what happens next in the series. And for anybody who hasn't read them, I can thoroughly recommend them. I know there's some people on the chat that have said they've read them and they really enjoyed. Sarah said that she said Death at the Sanatorium is a brilliant book. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Thank you for joining us for Halloween Fest. Thank you, Ragnar, for joining us. And good luck with the next book. And yes, hope that Iceland Noir goes well next month.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.